Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Steven here, Northwest Small Batch Brewing, and I'm starting the timer on this one because I got a lot to go through, and there's no way this is going to be another two-parter. I just don't have a way. There's just too much to talk about with this to make one video. So we're going to do two probably. So today's a brew talk, and today I'm talking about thiolized yeast. Now, it's a curious thing because it's not really available to homebrewers anymore. This whole, I'll get into it, but the whole biotransformation and basically releasing these thiols, it's just not something that is really viable anymore for homebrewers. It was a short period of time when we could do it, and now we can't. And I'm going to get into all of that. And probably there's going to be some people that don't agree. But I want to preface this like I've done in the past and say, I'm just not sitting down and just talking about this without having researched it and looked at a lot of information from different sources. So I'm not making this stuff up, just so we're clear. This is all pretty verified information. So take that for what it is. So first of all, let's start at the beginning. And what are thiolized yeasts? Thiolized yeasts are engineered to unlock hidden sources of tropical aroma in beer. We could say flavor, but it's mostly aroma. It unlocks what's called bound thiols that are locked inside both malt and hops. That's right, it's both malt and hops, which I did not know before I started doing this research. What else? Well, it basically was something that was very specific to Omega yeast. Omega came out with thiolized strains of yeast, which are no longer available, sort of. I'll talk about that in a second. That's why I was saying a second ago how it's not really a thing that homebrewers can do anymore. So I'll explain that more as I go here. If you don't know, Omega is known for making GMO yeast. They don't just do that, but it's like that's the yeast you look at when you're looking for yeast that you're like, okay, I'm looking, you know, they can't sell them in a lot of markets, right? Because Europe, Canada, Australia, they don't like GMO stuff. But it's interesting. It's kind of cutting edge. It's interesting to watch and read about. So what's the process, the thiolized process? Well, it enhances the yeast's ability to biotransform compounds found in malt and hops to unleash their thiols, which are flavor and aroma active compounds that are reminiscent of grapefruit, passion fruit, and guava. There's another sort of similar thing from thiols. I can't think of it. I think I might have written it down somewhere. But basically something similar to marijuana. It's very like the ingredient. It gives these, you know, funky and marijuana-like flavors that I'm not a huge fan of that, but it's a similar thing. The thiols and this other. I can't think of it. I'm sure everybody's writing it down in the chat comments right now. Anyway, we'll move on from that. But the point is that there are these compounds, like thiols, in the yeast or in the hops and in the grain that you can't normally get to, that the yeast is specifically able to unlock for you. So what exactly are thiols? They are, as I said, aroma compounds that have sort of grapefruit, passion fruit, guava flavors and aromas. They're found in a variety of tropical fruits. I'm saying the thiols are found in tropical fruits. They're also found on wine, grapes. That's why, have you ever heard of the phantasm powder? Yeah, that has a lot to do with this process. Now, that was almost a fad. You don't see that really anymore. I think you can still get them. A year ago I was able to. I haven't looked recently, but and then of course you can find thiols in hops as well. So they're detectable as parts per trillion levels in the hops, and all these, and in grain. And they're more impactful than, say, esters, or I just remember the word for it, the marijuana-like substance, terpenes. Similar to terpenes. This is similar to terpenes. I'll have to look more into that and see if that's also something that's been basically stopped at the homebrew level because of this, because of the yeast strains not being available anymore. So thiols consist in 2 forms. All right. 3 forms which are highly sort of aromatic and volatile. They are the precursor forms that are abundant in malt, right? Then you have the non-aromatic that require special yeast. With that yeast, it can biotransform and release those flavors and aromas. Now, New World hops. Let's talk about New World hops, specifically Southern Hemisphere hops. These appear to be the highest in what we call free thiols. Okay, free thiols, which contribute to their characteristic tropical fruit aroma. These are not the precursor, okay? These are the free thiols. So the best hops to use if you're trying to do this, which you really can't do at the homebrew level, but when that short period of time when we could, you would want to stick with the Southern Hemisphere hops. I'm going to get more into explaining that. I might be able to do it in this video. We'll see how I have time. Then you have, so that's that, right? Then you have the precursor thiols, which are abundant in barley, but it does not reach a sensory threshold until it's converted into its freeform thiols. So in beer and wort, you need you need a yeast that's capable of biotransforming all of those thiols and free them so that you can get the flavor and aroma. In other words, without that particular yeast that can unlock it, you really aren't getting, you're wasting your time, basically. All right, let's talk about Omega, because Omega yeast is the one that basically is kind of, I was talking to someone last night, and I kind of compared Omega in a way, not completely, to oh, no, I can't think of it. There's a seed company. It'll come to me, but basically they make GMO seeds, and they're not even around anymore. They were bought out by another company, but basically the problem with them was that they would say, well, they have these GMO seeds and they don't reproduce, right? So you have to use their seeds and you have to buy them again and again and again. Monsanto, that's the name. But the farmer next door might have organic, farm. What happens is those Monsanto seeds in the air, they maybe come across onto that other farm. Birds eat up the seeds and then deposit them, on the other side of the fence. And so Monsanto comes along and says, hey, you're using our seeds. We can prove it. Your fruit and your food has our seeds. We're suing you. And the farmer's like, nah, it's not. I'm not using your seeds, but I can't stop them from coming over to my side. All right. So Omega had this issue too, right? Omega just recently discontinued all 400 series yeasts that they had for homebrewers that were like the thiolized yeasts. Most, if not all, of those yeasts are still available for pro brewers. That's why I said it's not that this isn't possible anymore, but unless you have access to a pro brewer's, they can get you that yeast, you're not able to do it at the homebrew level anymore, right? So there are some yeast strains that can sort of work for you if you can find them. I will try, if I remember when I'm editing this, to put a list, or what I'll do? I'll put it in the comments. I'll try to remember to put in the comments a list. It's not a very long list of yeast that supposedly can still do some of this biotransformation, but I don't know how much of those are, whether you can even still get them. Omega pulled their 400 series thiolized yeast, right? We're talking like their Cosmic Punch. They made one called Heliogazer, Star Potty, Lunar Crush, those kinds of yeasts, they pulled those from the homebrew market in around 2025 because they couldn't control the redistribution and commercial, what they call misuse of genetically engineered patent pending yeast once it left their facility. You see how I'm comparing this to Monsanto? They can't control what happens with that yeast, and other people using it nefariously and reusing it and selling it. And so early 2026 of this year, there was basically no widely available, purposely engineered thiolized yeast strains being sold to homebrewers at all. It sucks. I really didn't ever do it, but I hate to see something like that become not available to homebrewers, you know? So what they're saying is that once a pack of yeast exits, you know, into the wild, right? This thiolized yeast, they make it, it's out into the wild, homebrewers have it, whatever. It can be propagated indefinitely. It can be passed from brewer to brewer. It can be used commercially without any licensing, and it can be sold to competitors under the radar. So Omega explicitly have stated that they have documented cases of competitors acquiring and selling Omega's bioengineered strains to professional breweries without authorization. So that is why they have stopped selling it to homebrewers. But I'm going to keep talking this because it's if it ever comes back, even if it doesn't, I think it's an interesting topic. So how do you optimize biotransformation? Well, the hop variety, the yeast strain, and the brewing process are all super important, right? You need to select a yeast strain that is a good thiol biotransformation potential, which we can't do now, but if we ever can in the future again, or you can get it from like a pro brewer. You also need specific yeast strains that are known to release higher levels of bound thiols. And again, I'm going to try to put into the comments a link to Lallamand. Lallamand has a really good guide to strains and like different yeast strains. I'll put that in the comments. It's very interesting. It's a good read. Like I said, I try to research this stuff. Another way to optimize your biotransformation is to use simple sugars to stimulate your thiol freeing. So yes, it dries out your beer, but that's another way to help do that. Use ample yeast nutrient. When you're doing biotransformation and these kinds of yeast, you want to use probably extra yeast nutrient than what you would normally use. Now, after fermentation is complete, you want to let the beer cold crash for like 3 to 5 days on the yeast. I actually do that anyway, but in particular, if you're doing this thiolized yeast and biotransformation, let it cold crash for like 3 to 5 days on the yeast. That allows the thiols that are inside the yeast cells to be released and secreted into the beer. Last thing before I cut this off, and I'll have to do part 2. There is a hop that I came across called Allura hops. I did check. They are currently available on more beer. So this is an active hop that you can buy. It's Allura, Allura. They are great for thiol releasing. They over 50% of these hops have a rare oil that contributes to really smooth, fruity character. They are 5 times the thiol precursor of like a regular Cascade hop. I think I'll get to this tomorrow on the next, part 2. But there are some hops that are not very good to use for thiolized, for biotransformation. Some of them are going to give you flavors that you don't want. So I had this conversation once where I said, there's just certain hops you don't want to use for this. And someone said, no, every hop has, thiols, and any hop can be used. I suppose you could say any hop could be used, but you don't want to use any hop. There are some that just would not be good for biotransformation. And I'll get to that, like I said, in part 2. Last thing about these Allura hops, the combination of the oils and the extra thiols and the precursors means that Allura smells fruity, and it provides yeast with raw materials to create a really good beer. So if you're looking for doing, hops at high Kreuzen, and I'll get into that too. In part 2, I'm going to tell you what hops you can use, when to add them, how long you leave them in, all of that. I'm going to get to that. But these Allura hops are one to look at. All right, I'm going to cut this short. It's already pretty far. I'm at least at 15 minutes here. I'm looking at the clock. So I will be back next week with part 2. And until then, keep on biotransforming. Cheers, everybody.